Hey, buddy, how's it going? It's really good to see you again. Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm doing really good today. I'm very happy to be on the show and to talk to my friend Peter. It's nice. Sure. Short version or long version? um, it, it, okay, buddy. I'll try and keep it a little short. But I was uh, I grew up in a Christian home. I was born in Savannah, Georgia, and um, it was a very loving home, a loving mother. Went to church when I was a kid and taught a lot of things about the Bible and about God. And as I got older, especially in my teen years, I began to just question everything that I had ever heard and slipped into a place where I didn't even really know what I believed in anymore. I became to become very rational in my thinking about the world around me. I believed that we were what we could just see. And I began to wonder if everything that I was shown when I was growing up was just a lie. So I abandoned those beliefs. I uh, became an agnostic at first and then an atheist. And as I was, going through my schooling and college and uh, my military years, I began to talk to all my friends that were different backgrounds with different religions and asking them what they believed and why they believed it. And one of my favorite things to do was to destroy someone's worldview when I was an atheist. I love to show them how foolish what they believed was. I like to tell them just how illogical and irrational and unscientific their thinking was. And I wasn't a very nice person.
Sorry.
I looked at myself and I saw, that's okay. I saw flaws. And when I studied philosophy, one of the things that Aristotle said was pretty much that I am what I repeatedly do. But he kind of went towards the fact that excellence was not an act but a habit. And so I tried to go down that road of, my own excellence. And I saw that I was failing miserably. I was an adulterer. I was a liar. I had stolen in my life. When I was as a musician, I had even found myself doing drugs, and my thinking got harder and harder and harder. While I was in college, taking psychology and uh, physics, I began to truly look at the universe and try to sharpen what I thought as an atheist. And I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out for a fact that I'm right and what I see around me is the truth, and what everyone else is telling me is uh, just filled with fallacies. So I began to really dive into other religions, and I began to ask all of my friends that were Muslim and that were Hindus and Buddhists, Taoists, and um, ask them specifically what they believe and why they believe it, because I wanted to find my own little journey of truth. Because to me, honesty was important, even though I found that I wasn't very honest with myself sometimes. So I dove head in, saw that each religion had its own set of beliefs, its own set of backgrounds. When I spoke with my Muslim friends, I found the biggest fallacy that I saw was that it was all about how hard they worked to achieve to get to God, because even in their own belief systems, they didn't have any specific guarantee that they were going to go to heaven. I mean, and all the surahs like 19, 71 through 72, 61 through 10, and Surah 46:9. Even Muhammad himself said he didn't know whether or not he was going to be going to heaven. With my Buddhist friends and my Hindu friends, they wanted to reach nirvana, but they weren't sure if they were going to be able to. Many failures over and over and over again in their own right, trying to do it by their own works. So I also looked back into the God of Israel and the Christian God, and I found that those two religions were highly connected, and that they had a strong understanding of specifically what they believed, why they believed it, and they kept talking about their surety. Well, my biggest problem was no one was sure what they believed. No one was 100%. That means that you weren't being very skeptical if you said that. In my journey, seeing and looking at the Christianity, I found that the difference was that it was completely different, because it had nothing to do with your works, how good you were, how hard you decided to change. They were saying that it was a change that came from outside yourself and entered in, and it made you a different person. So I decided I would look into this religion, and I would look at it from a completely different perspective than what I had grown up seeing. When I did that, I was really surprised to find, for every question I had concerning all my faults, there was an answer to it. So I asked out loud, if there is a God, would you show me that it's consistent, your word, and that you are real? When I said those things, over a period of time, looking into it, I found that for some reason, the eyes of my mind were looking at the eyes of how I felt. Now that's a strange way of saying it, but I began to look very deeply into myself. I began to wonder if there was just something wrong at my core. When I did that, I came into my house one night when I was in Virginia Beach. I was living in Virginia at the time. And I walked into my living room, and when I walked in, it was a very empty house and all the lights were off. I lived by myself. And as I walked in, I felt an overwhelming sense of brokenness, loneliness. I wondered if what I believed was the truth. And so I cried out to God. I said, God, if this is the truth, if Jesus is real, I need to know. And I was suddenly overwhelmed with a strong sense that someone else was with me, that someone else was reaching deep inside me and changing me from the inside out. My mind began to change, my heart began to change, and as that happened, tears began to flow down my face, and I just wept, and I hit the floor, and I cried for about 2 hours, and I just kept speaking to God, because I suddenly knew that the creator of the universe, the one I had spit in his face for so many years, that I had said so many evil things about, so many people that I had lied to, I was suddenly aware that he was right there and that he actually loved me. That he
So
actually
so
cared.
let me jump in real quick, because it's kind of a similar story that your brother told, and
Yes.
so my first question would be, uh, how did you distinguish whether this was coming from you or from something else or someone else?
Because to me, testing variables and any hypothesis was extremely important. And I tested every other religion. I went and checked it out. I spoke some of the things that they said. I asked some of the questions. I asked, even in Islam, if it was true, I'd like to know. And nothing happened. When I went to looking into Hinduism and Buddhism and questioning whether or not I could find peace in that, I found that all I was doing was in meditation and in thinking about it, that I was still the same person coming out of that meditation than I was going into it. There was nothing different about who I was. This night that I'm speaking about, when I asked, that this is why it was so strange to me, and comparing all the variables between each religion, when I did that, and I actually asked Jesus if he was real, and I genuinely meant it in my heart, that is when he met me there. I know that's a very hard thing to understand or grasp as an atheist, because I was exactly where you're sitting. I was a skeptic. I still am a skeptic in life, but on this particular issue, I personally knew God. Um, the scriptures were true to me when it says in John 14:16-17, Jesus said that he would ask the Father that the Helper would come, the Holy Spirit, and that he would dwell with us and in us. But the world could not see or know him. But we know him because he's in us and with
and
us.
and and that's where
Um,
and that's sorry, and that's where you and I disagree, because as
exactly.
as
I
far as
understand.
far no but as far as I'm concerned, knowledge is demonstrable, and one thing you absolutely cannot do is you cannot demonstrate your God to me. So
Absolutely.
while you may see it as knowing, I don't think you
Hmm.
can actually say that you know, because you have no way of
Oh,
demonstrating
Peter,
if any of this is true. And so the same thing that I said
you're
to
you're on
Jeff.
the money.
I'm fairly certain that something happened, and I'm fairly certain that that you had some kind of experience. But
Hmm.
so what I find lacking is uh, the method how you verified that what you think you experienced, that was actually
Sure.
what you experienced, and herein lies my problem. And we've talked a lot offline, so I know you a little bit, which is unusual for a guest, for me at least, because usually I want to have um no contact until we go live with the show. And we talked, I think maybe 2 hours last time after the show with Jeff.
Hmm.
So I already know a little bit about you, and you're a skeptic on pretty much everything except on the God belief, and that's where
Right.
both you and Jeff suspend skepticism in order uh, to have an opening to let the religion in, to let the God belief in. And I don't see why you would do that.
I understand that. Um, Peter, let me be straightforward with you, my friend. You are all right on those counts, especially as an atheist, and for me to tell you or anyone that uh, God is real for a fact, and that um, He is a variable that can be proven through scientific method, and that um, you uh, can find Him if you just pose a hypothesis. That's false. I could never tell you that. I would never tell any of my atheist friends that they know for a fact that God is real. Um, there are things that are in the Bible that speak to the fact that we all have a knowledge of God in us. But I can't say, as a human being, from one human being to another, God is real. God is the truth. I can't say that to you. I can't prove it to you. And anyone that says they can is promoting the highest fallacy in my book.
Okay, so but let me ask you this then. You keep citing the Bible. Um, I think
Sure.
that as a skeptic, that you will know that there are things in the Bible that are just incorrect. I mean, Adam and Eve never happened. Noah's flood never happened. I mean, we have evidence that we can show that that never happened. So why trust a book that has confirmed errors in it?
Well, we also have evidences that say that nothing did not produce everything. We also have evidences that say that the
But
universe and
but
how it
that's
came into its origins
but that's
are. I mean,
that's a claim.
the
Sorry,
thing
sorry.
is,
I have to interrupt because that is a claim
go ahead.
that claim is made by no one. No one says
And so,
no one says it came from nothing.
actually, Lawrence Krauss says that the universe came into being out of nothing.
Yeah, but
It's saying that
have
pretty
you
much
read have,
another.
have you read Krauss's
I have,
book?
I have,
And
and
so
I have,
he
and
has
his.
different explanations of nothing.
I know, I know, and
I do not I have to honestly say I do not understand any of it.
well,
I did however
I do because of.
I did however come up with with an analogy that I in a talk with someone who knows a little bit more about cosmology than I do. So
Mhm,
the total energy count of our known universe is zero.
mhm,
So
mhm.
that would mean it is nothing. And what he basically said
But see
is,
that right there.
what he basically said is, see it as your bank account. So you have an overdraft of $10 on your bank account. You got $10 in your pocket. How much money do you have? You've got nothing. And that's how he
Mhm.
explained the nothing. But so far, what Krauss had, I don't think that that's confirmed science yet. I don't think that that's consensus yet. What we do know
Yes,
so far is
but
that
yet it's
it
still,
well, it started with a singularity, and the
but,
singularity is not nothing.
but yet it's still taught though, Peter, regardless of whether or not it's a proven science. Um, it's still taught. Well, you can hear it in lectures, and you can also watch it uh, on TV shows.
Yeah, but
So
in schools, it's
the
not taught
entire
that.
world has been
In schools, it's not taught
right.
that
And
way.
see, here's the and let's get to a solid foundation on something. Is that when you say that, and when I speak about God, and I speak about the Bible, and I talk about variables that are there that I can't. It's a hypothesis. So when I talk about the Bible and I speak a hypothesis to you as an atheist, you're going to see it the same way that even many people in the world see Krauss's equation for something coming out of nothing. So the logic is the same way that we have our universal invariant laws, our laws of logic. X is X, the law of identity. X is not non-X, which is
I agree.
Krauss's thesis, which is the law of non-contradiction, my friend.
I
That's
agree.
why
I agree. I agree. But here's the thing.
and then you
There's
and
there's one thing. There's one thing we cannot do. We cannot go beyond Planck time. And what we already know is that at the very moment of the Big Bang, our laws of physics break
mm-hmm,
down. So we have no clue
uh-huh,
what the laws of physics were. Uh, well, there is no before because time in our universe started at the Big Bang. So there's no before.
yes.
But as far as you
The
could say,
big. There's
as
also
far
the
as
big black moment.
yeah, as far as you could say,
There's also
there was a Big Bang. At that point, our laws of physics no longer work, and we may get
right.
to a point where we can investigate. But yeah, until that point, the only honest thing to say is I don't know, and I I think it is
That's right.
I think it is dishonest then to say, well, a God did it,
Right. Well,
and
see, here's the thing: is it when someone comes, it's either one of two things. You either say that a God did it, or you say a God didn't do it. You presuppose one of the two, or you say I don't know at all. But there are
but it's
atheists
also
in
it's
science.
also not the those are not the only two options. I mean,
Right. I said like the middle one, which is I don't know any at all. I don't know whether it is or whether it isn't. So the three within the spectrum, and I believe you rank in the middle one, which is you can't say one way or another.
I don't
I was in
know.
that boat. I was a right. I was an atheist agnostic when I was not believing in God. I wasn't sure whether or not I what actually caused. I didn't know if it was God or if it wasn't God or if it was something else. I had no idea. When I tell you my personal experience about what I think about God, that's just my personal experience and what I've learned by testing the scientific method in religions against one another and how I came to know God in my own life. But I was curious as to whether or not it was true. Um, Science itself presupposes that nature exists, that it is discoverable order, and that it is uniform. So when we do these measurement tests against anything in the known universe, even against backgrounds sociologically or in religions, we find that there is an answer there. Um, and sometimes we find that there's not.
Yeah, and when there is not, the only honest way to do is say I don't know. And so here's the thing that I find really disheartening, because I talked to you, I talked to Jeff, I talked to the both of you after the show. I think that what you experienced uh, was 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 a deeply emotional thing. I don't doubt that. You both
Mhm.
have been honest with me on pretty much every topic we talked about. So I have no reason to assume that you're lying. What I do think is that
Right.
you might be fooling yourself, and the change and the change for the better that came in your life wasn't a God doing it. It was you doing it. You desperately wanted a
Right.
change. You desperately got out and searched. You wanted a change. What if
Well,
you did it? What if you did it all by yourself, and there was no outside influence? You just you just picked something that you could hold on to, but in fact, you did everything yourself.
but see, I can totally understand that point of view. I thought that way, my friend. A friend of mine recently reminded me of Feuerbach, which is I would rather be the devil in alliance with the truth than an angel in alliance with falsehood. I didn't care either way what truth I came to, and we today we coin it personal truth. Yet you have to remember when I tell you from one human being to another that what I experienced using every ounce of logic that I had in my mind is it's no way to tell you for a fact that it's true. I can't prove to you.
No.
I know it sounds like that. I could be lying to myself. I used to tell all of my friends that same thing, that believed in any kind of God. And I'd say you're lying to yourself. You're not being honest with yourself. The search that I did, Peter, was the most honest search that I could possibly do.
Oh,
Not experiencing.
I absolutely believe that, and I also don't believe that you are lying to yourself on purpose. I'm not saying any of
Right,
that
I understand.
because no, because but you can misinterpret something, and the same with Jeff. I think you didn't investigate what happened. I told Jeff about my experience where I saw aliens, which later was just a completely mental breakdown because of stress. And I lost an entire day. And in that day, I drove from my home in Holland to Basel in Switzerland and back. And the second half of the journey to Basel and the first half on the way back, I remember nothing about it. I checked in with in a hotel. I had dinner. So, and I know nothing about it. The only thing I know is that there was money missing out of my pocket, and I had no clue where that went. I didn't spend it on diesel for the truck. I didn't spend it on anything, but there was a lot of money missing, which I made up for myself before I went back to the company I worked for at the time. So I know that
what conclusion did you come to?
I didn't for at least 7 years, and then I met a girlfriend, someone with a very nasty past, and she had to go see a psychiatrist. And at one time, with one of the visits, I was talking to the psychiatrist, and she saw colors. So whenever she was stressed out, she saw all kinds of colors, and she would tell me about it. I said, I see colors. Do you see them? No, I can't see those. And so we talked with a psychiatrist about this, and that's when I first had the courage to tell someone about my experience. My ex-girlfriend at the time knew about it, but she was the only one. And he had an explanation. He had a couple of questions. What happened? What was your situation at the time? What was your situation at work? What was your situation at home? Both were bad. And he had an explanation. He said, what you had is pretty much the same that your girlfriend is going through right now. She's seeing things that aren't there. You had the same. And then he said, was there anything in your life related to aliens at that particular time? And there was, because that was the time where on the Discovery Channel it was all about aliens. You had the Ancient Aliens series, you had a series about Roswell, stuff like that. And I was heavily into that because I was interested. If there's life in outer space and people have seen it, and we have evidence, I want to know about it. So that was what I was watching all the time. And that was probably what triggered what I saw that particular day. My brain just shut off and said,
So
here's something pretty to look at. Look at that. And that'll calm you down.
so let me ask you a question about that. If I was I'm going to show you my thinking and the way I would answer that as an atheist myself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
or that in correlation is saying that if I watched a bunch of puppies on TV for days and days and days, and I got really obsessed with puppies, that one day I might see a puppy in my car or my truck. You're also saying that
No, no, no,
your
no. It
experience,
doesn't. It doesn't.
your
It, no, no. Hold on. It doesn't work that way. It was at a time where I was under heavy stress. I didn't like my job at that time.
right,
Uh, I
right,
I went to that company not to become a truck driver. I went to that company
mm-hmm,
to become a salesman, and
right,
because of problems in the company, they decided to buy their own truck, and everyone in the company had to drive it one day a week. And I was making a lot of hours, which I didn't get paid for. I was away from home, which I didn't wanted to, because, as I said, the situation at home wasn't that great. So I didn't want to be
right.
away from home. So and that's what led up to an amount of stress that resulted in my brain stepping in and saying, "Hey, this is enough. Now we're going to calm you down, because otherwise we're going to have problems." This is how the psychiatrist explained it to me.
Oh, gotcha. So basically, the psychiatrist is the variable in the equation that tells you what you're thinking by telling you that he would tell me the same thing, that if I was tired and I was having problems at home and I was stressful, my brain would let me see puppies when I was on the road. That's the same analogy and the same thinking that a lot of I find fallacy in when I speak to psychiatrists. That's just a little garbage to me. It's not that your experience wasn't real, but what the psychiatrist told you to me just sounds like just not true. It's too
Well,
full of holes.
no, it
There are too
seems
many
to be
people that actually.
it seems to be a well understood thing in psychiatry that can happen to people under a certain amount of stress. It
Yeah,
doesn't happen. It also doesn't
right.
happen. Wait a minute. It also doesn't happen to everyone.
Right,
Uh, some
right. That's
some
what that
people
you
some
took the
people
words out of
have
my
it.
mouth.
Some people have it. Some people don't. And I have to be honest. I would, if I had had a choice, I would have chosen not to have it, because it was, to me, it was really scary. Because I was certain that what I experienced was real. The
I understand.
bits and pieces that I remembered the day after were real. And
Just
so,
remember this, though. Remember, it just all it is just scary puppies. It's just scary
yeah,
puppies, my friend. Um, uh, that's the thing is in science there are variables that whether in medicine or in the brain this day that we can't account for. Psychiatrists are still trying to explain some of the things, but
oh yeah,
I've read some of the psychiatry textbooks, and I'm telling you, they change each year or every few years. And the explanation that you got for your experience for aliens back then would be different today. You would get a new variable.
yeah.
That's one of the reasons why in science we have our classificatory, methodological, and axiological presuppositions. We are
But
distinctions between space and time.
if we stick with this analogy, couldn't it have been that you experienced Jesus the same way that I experienced aliens?
See,
Isn't
touche.
isn't isn't that a possibility?
Exactly, touche. I cannot prove to you, like you cannot prove to me that you saw aliens. I can't
No,
prove to you that I met Jesus.
exactly.
So that is an impasse. That's an
And that is what I mean. I mean, if we don't have a way to investigate, uh, I had the opportunity to talk to someone who's an expert in the field, and who could give
mm,
me a plausible explanation based on
uh-huh.
research, confirmed multiple times that the human brain is actually capable of doing something like that. It's not the same for everyone, but the human brain is at least capable of doing that.
Well, Peter,
So,
you also know
so
that we
if
always have an explanation.
yeah, but if you then choose for the most plausible reason, what
Hmm.
if the reason would just be a natural one? Would you then need to go and take the leap to a supernatural one?
Well, let's say this. When it comes to your experience with aliens, when it comes to what you found to see and were afraid of, um, it's just as wild of a theory to say that your brain concocted every single one of those things. It's just as crazy to say that my mind came up with it because of endorphins and stress that was released. Um, when I say we experience things outside of ourselves, and you have to remember some of the things that you experienced with these aliens were outside yourself. The money missing, the some of the memory loss, but yet you were in the place. That place was real that you went to. Um, there were realities within your experience. Um, when it comes to people that get to know something that is beyond their conception or see something beyond their conception, they the easiest thing to do is to explain it away in our own minds. It is to explain it away that we just made it up. Um, you have to keep one thing in mind when I tell you about God and I tell you about what I experienced. I wasn't specifically set in my ways to say I wanted to see a God. The road that I went down was to disprove God.
And I've got
And
a
and my
question.
disproving,
Now I've got a question for you. Do you realize that pretty much every Christian says that? Every Christian who
they say
claims
that they want to, they want to
every
say,
Christian who claims to have been an atheist at some point says, "I didn't want to seek God. I didn't want to." But when we started out the show, you said the exact
uh-huh.
opposite. You
I said I
explored
started out.
you explored different religions. So you actually
Yes,
did seek
you have
out.
to
You did seek out
but
something.
actually that's not true. If we go back and look at the beginning of the video, when I said I started out my search, I started out by disproving and trying to prove that it was all just garbage. I actually love destroying people's worldviews. Remember, I didn't
Okay.
start out
Okay,
seeking a God.
then let me ask you one question from one skeptic to another. Why would you want to disprove
Sure,
something that has never been proven?
I wanted to disprove a belief system. I wanted to disprove that it was all coming from their mind, just like you're saying right now. I wanted to say that it was not true, and because I had science behind me. Uh, the beauty I found in science now is that when I use the scientific method in the world around me, I find that it's a way to discover the handiwork, the actual handiwork of God, not just to disprove God. But when I see it now, I see the handiwork in it. My eyes have changed. My thought process has changed. The way I can explain it to you is this simple, um, because we've talked about scripture before, and I can't prove the Bible to you. We could talk about fallacies, and we could talk about what's not true and what is true. But I'll show you something outside myself that was said long, long before I was ever born, and it's something that I never even read before I became a Christian. And it's two little small verses that Ezekiel 36:26-7 says at the end in 27. He says, "I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules." And John when he was writing confirmed what Jesus said years and years later when he said that he would send the Spirit of truth that would dwell within us. When I had my experience, something outside myself, God, changed my thinking and my heart. And the person that I was before is not the person that I was after. The best way that I could say this is before I received this change, I was cruel, contentious, extremely mean when I had to be. I was someone that thought with my other head instead of this brain.
Mm-hmm.
I committed adultery all the time. I was in my opinion, a very vile person. When I look back, that person is still right here. Who I was is still, it hasn't changed. That side of me is still there. There are two natures within me now. One nature battles the other nature, and I decide with this brain what I'm going to choose, which nature. Am I going to choose the nature that's sinful, or am I going to choose the nature that God put in?
But
If I choose the nature
that
that's sinful, I'd be
isn't
walking away.
yeah isn't that just saying that you did it all yourself and there's no outside influence? Because if you are now still
See,
deciding, between the two,
right.
to me, what that means to me is that you realize that the life you were leading wasn't the best, and um, I know you know the saying that what goes around comes around. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that with that kind of life, uh, you lost a lot of people as well. So, and if you now say I'm still choosing, isn't it then really obvious that it is you doing this and there's no outside influence on this?
Oh, like
Because if there
Aristotle
was,
said.
if there was, you wouldn't have to choose.
Well, see, like Aristotle said, like I said earlier, Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Years ago, I decided I didn't want to be that way. Like I said at the beginning, I tried to change. I tried to be a different person. But I found that deep inside of myself, there was a nature that argued and pulled me in a different direction. There is an answer biblically, but I'm going to speak to you from the same perspective, uh, so that you can maybe understand. When I was an atheist, I really did try. I philosophically looked into a lot of things. Like Plato said, that wise men talk because they have something to say, and fools because they have something to say. So I always had something to say. I was not the same person. I was completely changed. I know that sounds, I didn't do it. How do I explain this? What happened then that night and what happened ever since and has happened ever since. Um, who I was then is not who I am now. I was
Well,
a completely
as
different person
as I
as
said,
far as
I
the
do believe
way.
I do believe you. I, I I'm not saying that that isn't true. But
Right.
I still think, and while having talked with you offline as well, and having talked with Jeff, I think the ones who are making the change are you both, and there's no outside influence there. So you might have some kind of guidance. Um, you might find some
No, if you
comfort.
only knew me, if you only knew me then, Peter.
Well,
If you only knew me then, man. No, it's night
I
and
don't,
day. I'm not. My heart. Have you noticed how you and I have struck up a very good friendship, and how genuinely we connect with music, and other things. Um, it's because my heart now, when it comes to either my atheist friends or friends of any kind of background. My heart now is to actually grow in friendship, is to get to know someone genuinely, and to the best thing I can do when it comes to my relationship with Jesus is that he shines in my eyes, trembles in my voice, that the very example of what Christ did in my life is shown to everybody that I know, that my heart is completely out there for the people that I know, that they can see Jesus in me. The best thing I can do is be an example of him. And as far as you're thinking, I would ask you a simple question, which I ask myself all the time. Could you be wrong about everything?
No, I couldn't be wrong on everything.
Okay. Could you be wrong on the idea of God?
Oh, of course, I could be wrong on the idea of God. But let's say that I'm wrong. Uh, so I have had a moment where I would have wanted something to happen to me, something similar, something that I would know would help me in the long run. If there is a God, why does he pick people randomly and doesn't pick everyone who is genuine in when they ask the exact same questions? It isn't that a little bit a dishonest kind of God? Because that's how
To
I
see,
see it. That's how I see that.
I don't think that. See, I believe that if someone genuinely wants to know God, they genuinely desire a relationship to know if Jesus is real, and not just being skeptical, but they're genuinely honest with the truth about any situation.
Yeah, but that's
Um,
that's
we have
to
we
me
have
that's wait a
we
minute,
have
wait a minute. To me that's too easy because that's the no true Scotsman fallacy. You weren't genuine enough. You didn't ask good enough. That
That's not true.
that's
I didn't say that.
no
You
okay.
just put you just put words in my mouth.
No, okay,
You
but
just put words in my mouth. I didn't say
no,
that.
no. You said it differently. You said if you genuinely ask, and if you're genuine
You know
and
what I'm saying is this. But see, I didn't finish my thought.
okay, go ahead.
The finishing of my thought is this: is that if we continue to it, you will eventually find God. You will eventually find the truth. If you genuinely are seeking, you don't do it for 5 minutes or an hour or a year and then stop. You do it for as long as it takes. And if you go the rest of your life and find that nothing happens, no matter how genuinely you seek, then you can throw God out the window. I'm
But do
not
you know?
saying
Do you
that.
know? Do you know?
Um,
Do you know that that is a kind of brainwashing yourself? If you keep searching and come up empty, and keep searching and come up empty, that ultimately your brain will construct something, so you will find something. So your search hasn't been for nothing. It is
really, so
exactly how people fool themselves if they keep looking when there's nothing there, and they desperately want to find something, and ultimately that will lead them to something, and they will interpret that as finding something. It doesn't say
and
anything. It doesn't
we're
say anything about whether or not it's true.
right. I see. I wouldn't say it like that. The way you just said it was it would hurt many people's hearts. Because I know I've spoken from that same point of view. It's hurt my heart before. Think of it like this: um, as a scientist, how many times do you test variables in a hypothesis to find a theory until you finally find the theory? You do it as many times as you have to for the rest of your life.
No,
You don't
no,
stop.
because if you
Yeah,
test
you change.
no, listen, if you test one thing and the outcome
Mhm.
is zero, then you move on to something else and see if you can.
Precisely.
Yes, but that would mean
But see, you do
mean.
realize I'm talking about, like, when I searched for religions, I searched for every other religion. I didn't just search. I didn't say, oh, if the God of Christianity is real, and that's all I did for years and years and years. If I did that, then I would be promoting a fallacy. I don't agree with that. I think that if you're going to search, you're going to search through every area that you have in the world. You won't just do it on that one particular variable. That variable, if it fails, you throw it out and you put another variable in. And if that variable fails, you throw it out and you put another one in until you finally find the one that, once consistently tested against, proves that it stays the same. And that is how you find a theory. That's how I found my theory about God. When it comes to himself, when it comes to his word, I tested all of those variables. And I found, when I was an atheist, fallacies and all kinds of different things. So I would throw it out. But when I suddenly had a new spirit, I realized that there were things that I didn't see before. I was looking at it from a completely different perspective. I had a shift in perspective. That's all it was.
Yeah, and to me it still points to, and I'm sorry, I'm responding to people in the live chat now, because now
No,
everyone
no, that's okay.
everyone everyone wants to come in. So
That's fine.
I'll
Ask
throw it
away.
out. No, I'll throw it out. Uh, so last time, you, Jeff, and I, we had a fairly long talk after the show. Uh, would
Yeah,
would
buddy.
would you and Jeff be up for doing an after show after this, where we can have some more people in? I'll be more than happy to set that one to live as well, if people want to come in and have a
So they
chat.
want to ask. They want to ask you, all me and him, some questions. That's
Yes,
fine.
yes. So
That's totally fine.
I usually do.
Yeah, he's here.
I hate after shows because they usually go on every single topic except the topic that the show was about. So, but if people want to come in,
Yeah, but we have
and
fun.
we did have fun last time, so
Yeah.
that's no question. So, um, well, if people want to come on an after show, stick around, and I'll set it up and throw out a link. So, no problem.
Cool, man.
Um, yeah, they'll have to follow me on Twitter, or either be subscribed to the channel to get it. So we'll see what happens. Um, so now I completely lost my train of thought. Um,
It's okay, man. I do it all the time.
yeah, and we had several topics. What I'm really curious about is, so you cite the Bible a lot, and you see the Bible as some kind of authority, and I do not. Is
All right.
let me ask the question like this: Is it because you have to believe first, and then the Bible's going to make sense, or did the Bible make sense and then you started to believe? What happened to you?
Oh no, it didn't make as much sense until I believed. When I believed, I really jumped in. I began to study the Greek and the Hebrew, and and I'm going to give a shout out to the people, my mentors, which are Dr. Michael Brown and Dr. James White, and I also love Jeff Durbin. Um, I'm a partner with Apologia Studios, and I'm a partner with Dr. Michael Brown and Fire School of Ministry. I'm a torchbearer. I I could say this, that I found that there was a consistency in the epistemology, the hermeneutics of the Bible. I saw that there was building blocks that were there that I hadn't seen before. When I read the original Greek in the Koine, and I read the book of John for the first time, I was amazed at how simple it is. To people today that are in the King James controversy, that fight over the fact that the King James Bible is the most authoritative Bible, it just shocks me because of how complex it's written in Highborn English, old Highborn English, and the fact that the original languages of the New Testament were simple and for the lower class. So when I read the Greek, and the beginning was the word, and archean ho logos, kai ho logos, and proston theon, kai theos, and ho logos, I was beautifully aware at how intricate each part of the Bible tied together, the way that Paul himself tied Corinthians 8:6 with the Shema. When a Hebrew or a Jew today says, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, and they say the Lord is one. Paul himself said in Corinthians that as for us, there is one God, the Father, and from whom are all things, and one Lord, whom are all things, and through whom we exist. So it all is tied into the Shema. I saw where I used to call that a fallacy. I now saw how intricate it worked, how beautifully it tied in. So the things that I saw now are not anywhere near the level that they were back then.
Well,
It's
there's a
completely different.
question. There's a question from the live chat from Rhonda, and that's, I think, a very good question. Doesn't it bother you that we don't have any originals from the Bible? We only have copies of copies of copies with all the changes. The oldest Bible we have is the Codex Sinaitus. I don't even know how to.
Yes, Sinaitus.
The Sinai Bible. If you compare,
Sinaitus.
yeah, if you compare that one to the modern day KJV, there are 14,000 discrepancies between the two.
Okay.
So,
well, in
which is the real one? That's something
well,
you're
let's
never going to
let's
find
talk
out.
about let's talk about that for a second, because that's one of my fortes. I absolutely love. Thank God for Dr. James White. The way that we have transmission of texts, some of the oldest are the Masoretic texts. We also have what was found in Egypt years and years ago, where we have copies of Isaiah and copies of the New Testament that are within the first 200 years, 1 to 200 years. They're that early. They even go back earlier than that. And they, as far as the discrepancies go, you do realize that the actual discrepancies in the Bible are ands, and, well, not like ands, but like, therefore they went, instead of saying therefore they all went. I'm trying to say it in English for you. It's a simple word, like the all is missing instead of they went. You have to remember that when these transmissions were happening, that you had people that were sitting by candlelight, writing down one thing after another. Sure.
Hold that thought. I agree with you that is also present, but within the modern Bibles that we have today, the versions that we have today, there are verses in one Bible that contradict the exact same verse in another version. So it isn't just
Like,
a few simple words that are missing, and aren't that important. There are also complete differences and contradictions between the verses or between the Bibles, but also they also exist in the earlier copies that we have, where one verse says this, and in another copy that we have, another document that we have, it says the exact opposite in the same verse. So
you talking about in the original
if
text, or
and
in or
and
are you
well,
talking about in the original text?
we don't have the original text, and that's my biggest problem.
I'm talking
Let's
about
say let's say
the
let's say
earliest.
no let's say that the Bible is the Word of God. Let's say the Bible is the Word of
Okay.
God. Why then
Hmm.
did God such a poor job to preserve that word and to make sure that in every language the translation was correct? Why did he use languages that are no longer in use, that have died out? Why
Hmm.
why didn't he choose that a lot better? Why didn't he preserve the originals so we can go back and we have one text and we don't have 30,000 denominations quibbling about which version of the Bible is the correct one? For instance, the KJV was influenced by King James. He had certain verses altered because he was bisexual and did want to have his relationships the way he wanted. One of the
No,
funniest
I'm not gonna,
one of the
I'm
funniest
not.
things I've ever heard about King James is that he actually went in front of the British government and defended him being gay, with the fact that Jesus apparently was gay, and so if Jesus could be gay,
Well,
then why couldn't he? So and
that's a falsehood.
no,
That's
that's
actually false. No,
no,
listen to me.
this no,
Listen.
I have
Let me tell you why that's not.
I have looked this
I
I
researched
have
it
looked
more.
this
Listen,
I have looked this
I
up,
researched it more,
and
man.
this is documented in the British government
Sure, sure. Well,
that he actually said this. So
let me ask you a question. Who wrote who? Where is the main source for the King James version? Do you know who it was?
um, there are
I can tell you. I can tell you who it.
there's
There's
several.
one. It's only one. There's only one. There's only
Okay.
one source, and his name's Erasmus. All right, Erasmus is the one that wrote out the Greek that helped translate the King James version into uh, where we actually have it today. Now, I'm not sitting here trying to necessarily defend the King James version. I care more about the original Greek and the original Hebrew, so I don't usually argue with people about the translations into English that people try to find fallacies with. The words that were changed were words like community into words like church. Those are the main changes that happened during the reign of King James. But you also have Luther's transmission that he translated from where he got Erasmus. Um, but the main thing is we look back, and today we have translations. The good ones that I recommend are like the NASB and the ESV. And the reason why is because we use the Masoretic texts. The Masoretic texts are some of the oldest texts that we have of the New Testament. When you compare today's versions, like you said earlier about the NIV and the NLT and others, there are versions that I don't recommend at all, like the Jehovah's Witness version. They
Okay.
completely get
Okay.
most. They
Let's
get wait. They get most everything. Wait. They get most everything wrong. But what I would ask you is this: when you said that, how is it that God can translate or transmit all of these documents, and there be all these things that you see a problem with? I'd ask you this: how is it that God, who created you, and you being a fallible being, tell God, who is the creator of the universe, how he's supposed to do it?
that's quite easy. I wasn't created.
Right. See,
I'm
that's what
just,
you
I'm
believe.
just, I'm
But
just.
if you're going to argue, if you're going to argue against God,
No,
or if you're going to
but
argue against
listen,
God, my friend,
listen.
then
I've got a serious question. Um,
sure.
you said you prefer certain Bibles because they can be tracked down to the earliest copies.
I like King James as well. I like that too.
Yeah,
I
but
don't mind.
isn't
I'm in all.
tell me
There
if
are
I'm
certain
no listen.
versions.
Oh, hold on, Sean.
Sure.
Is that what you just said? That you prefer the NIV and you
I
mentioned that? Yes,
no
because
the ESV.
the ESV. Okay,
I do,
because they were
but I
based.
mainly
No. Listen. Because they were based
sure.
on the oldest copies that we have. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
but how do you know that the oldest copies that we have are correct? Because
Because of
it could very
the
well be that those are wrong and that newer copies are
right.
a lot
Well,
more accurate to the originals. How would you know?
well, it's comparative text variance. When you do a comparative text variance between all the different translations that we have from the original Koine Greek and Hebrew, um, the small variations that you have in each text are so minute that the idea of the sentence still comes across just exactly the same way. Now, when I said that there are versions out there that I do not endorse, it's because there are sects of religion that are not actually truly Christian that have their own version, like the Jehovah's Witnesses. They believe that Jesus was Michael the Archangel. They don't believe that he was God come in the flesh.
No,
And so they
but
trans
listen.
they the guy that did the translation doesn't even know how to speak Greek.
No, listen. But you got my question wrong. My question wasn't about all of that. My question was, how do you know that the oldest copies that we have are the most accurate
Okay.
compared to
Yeah.
the originals? Couldn't it be that newer copies are actually more accurate, but the copies in between are lost? So the more
Okay.
accurate
I'll
ones
say it
are
again.
actually the newer ones. Couldn't that be possible?
Okay, I'll say it again. I'll try to make it simple. Like I said, it's comparative text variance. When you look at all the manuscripts together and you compare all of them. Now, I'm not talking about translations of the Bible that are new. I'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, but
But
you can't compare
when you
all
look
of them.
at
Listen, Sean. That's where
you
that's
can
where you
take
make.
every you don't really think, my friend, you really don't think, and trust me, I know because I have a friend that sits on the board that translates documents.
No,
You really don't think
No,
that
you're missing.
they look at every document.
Sean, listen. You're missing my point.
Yes.
How do you compare a text that is lost to a text that you have?
Now let's get this straight. Are you talking about the original document that may have been
No,
written in 70 AD?
I'm not even talking about the original text. What I said was, you said
Then
the oldest documents are the ones you trust most. But there is a strong possibility that newer documents are more accurate compared to what the originals were, but the copies
mhm.
in between got lost. So now we have
Okay.
a false copy. Now we
Uh,
have a false copy that is older than a more accurate copy. And how do you know that that's not the case? Because you have no
sure.
originals to compare them to. And you can make all kinds of comparisons, but you will never get to the truth because you do not have the originals. And those are the ones you need to compare
Okay.
them to.
Okay, but like you said, we're not talking about the originals. So
Yes, but I
I
was.
was going to. Okay,
But
well, that's why I started to make a comparison with the originals, so that it, just in case you did ask that, I could cover it for you, because I like to be thorough. Buddy, is as far as the uh, comparisons on the older and the newer, if we took the newest copies that we have and the oldest copies that we have, every one of them, and we put them together, and that's what we do a lot of times. We will put them together and compare the two. They match up.
no, they
The
don't.
variations that people listen, the variations that like I said earlier, the variations that come up are so small. It's words like they uh, and the same idea is conveyed. The reason why I talk about the older text the certain way, like the Masoretic text, is because it's the original Koine Greek, which is simple. When you take that, if I take an ESV and then I take a New King James, which or a King James, and we compare them together, we're talking a 500-year difference in what's recently been translated and what was translated years ago, and we compare the two. They actually match up. The same idea is conveyed regardless of whether or not there is a one specific word. And like I said,
I got a,
we're getting into.
I got
Go
a
ahead.
question for you.
Sure.
Are you aware of the evil Bible?
Go ahead. It's the evil Bible.
Yes. So
Okay. What?
I
No, I
was
don't know what you're
looking.
talking about.
I was looking. I have a video on this that was part of a documentary about the KGV actually, and
Uh,
I
right.
think it is the 1634 edition of the KGV that is called the Evil
Sure.
Bible.
Okay.
And the only thing that is different from that one and the year before and the year after is one word.
Uh-huh.
And that one word is missing in that particular version of the Bible. And that word is not. So in the commandments, it says, "Thou shalt commit adultery."
Mm-hmm.
And that is my issue when you say it is just small things. Here's one word is missing.
So a
And you
mistype
can you can
is
you can
is
you
is
can look at
the
you can look it up. I think it was the
yeah.
1634 edition.
Okay. It's like this a mistype or something like that. Look, when it comes to the transmission of the text and what we have today, um, there is a clearer, more precise, and how do I say this to you? When you actually work in that kind of work where you compare text and you translate text and you translate documents, if you had a puzzle piece, let me ask you a question. If you had a puzzle piece that had, you're supposed to have 100 pieces for that puzzle piece, and you only had 97 of them, it wouldn't be as good as if you had, say, 150 different puzzle pieces to put on that puzzle. When it comes to the Bible, especially even the New Testament, we have far more texts which allow us to get a more comprehensive view of what was originally written.
I agree.
Now, this is the way scholars think today.
I agree.
When it comes to the New Testament, and it comes to even the Tanakh, the basically the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim, and we also have the Besorah and the writings for the New Testament. These things, all these translations line up, and it gives us a beautiful perspective of the original idea, thought, conceived, and transmitted and given out. Um, which is better than Homer's Odyssey, which is better than any other ancient writing that we have today. It's the absolute best. Um, now, I have argued with atheists because they think when I say stuff like that, I'm talking about that it was a historical fact. the things that happened in the Bible. I can't. I'm not going to speak to that. I'm speaking to the transmission of text and the conveying of the idea, the story, what was spoken about.
And that was exactly what I mentioned earlier. And before we go any further, I want to thank Spooky Better, who's in the side chat. He Googled it for us. Now,
very good question.
Hold on. It is the 1631 edition of the Bible. It's called the Adulterous Bible, Sinner's Bible, or Evil Bible, and it was by Robert Barker and Martin Lucas. They published it.
Right.
But what my biggest problem is with all of this, if you have an omniscient, omnipotent God, how can he let this happen? How can he have his word, which is demonstrably the most important thing in Christianity, how can he have that corrupted?
It's not. It's not demonstrably the most. Listen. It's not the most important thing in Christianity. If we even didn't have the Bible, Christianity would still be Christianity. The truth is this.
How would you know? How would you know what to do?
Christianity is Christianity because it's like this. Back in the original church, when the church was just starting, the community, the Jewish communities, they didn't have a New Testament. They had the Tanakh. That's when they were going to the Greeks, they brought the Septuagint so that they could read the original Hebrew scriptures. That is what was taught. And whenever I speak to my Jewish friends and I speak to them about Yeshua, I don't talk to them about the New Testament. I only go to the Tanakh. I only go to the Torah and show where Jesus was in the Torah, because that's how they did it originally. Jesus,
but he isn't.
We are
in
Christians the because Yeshua rose.
But he isn't in the
but
Torah.
see, Yeshua, the prophecies of you, but yes, see, Yeshua actually is in the Torah, and Yeshua is in the writings. He is in the prophets, and there are multiple things that speak of Yeshua and the coming of the Messiah, the Mashiach, and those are beautiful. That's an entirely
the biggest problem.
That's an hour-long discussion.
I know, but the biggest problem is the Jews that have the Torah, they don't see Jesus as the Messiah. So they would disagree.
There are many that do.
They would disagree with you on the fact that Jesus is in the Old Testament. When there's a prophecy, it is the name Emmanuel that comes up, and I know that apologists want to take.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Yeah, want to take the meaning of the name and use that to slide in something else. But if you're going to name someone, you're going to name him.
Yeah.
Words have meaning. Words also have meaning in the Bible.
Look, let's say the word wonderful or counselor or mighty God. Mighty God he will be called mighty God. Now, was Jesus, Yeshua, named mighty God? Was he named God with us? Was he named? No. It's in the original Hebrew, it's a title. It means to announce, to say.
I agree.
That is
I fully agree.
Say who they are.
I fully agree.
When I hear atheists, my friends.
So we can agree that it's a title. It's not a name. Where it's in the prophecy, it says he will be named. He won't be given a title.
Yeah,
he won't be given a title. And if you look at the New Testament, Jesus even denies to be God. So
that's not true. He said, "I am my Father are one and the same." When he said that, he also said that before Abraham was, I am. He said, anaho, and ego I me. When he said ego I me, I am, he was claiming to be God. And they picked up stones to kill him because he said that. He was speaking directly to the Jewish authorities. The thing about that is those claims, him saying who he was, are one of the things that sparked the controversy. That's why he was asked at his trial in front of the Jewish authorities, are you the Messiah, the Son of the living God? And he said, ego I me. And then he said, and you shall see. And his reference was the Son of Man.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between Son of God and Son of Man. Son of Man is the actual reference in the Old Testament, in Daniel, about who the Messiah was, that he is the Son of Man. And he said, you will see the Son of Man lifted up high and seated on the next to the Father,
mm-hmm.
Coming on the clouds of glory. So when he said that, it really, really made them mad, and they said, you've heard his guilt, and let's kill him.
Okay. I can't say for sure that you are wrong. I can't. Because in order to do that, I would have I would need access to the original documents, which we don't have. And
so he says before Abraham was, I am. When you see that,
hold on, Shawn.
Sure.
We've been
my friend.
We've been on air for an hour and a half. So usually I try to cut it out at an hour and a half, because otherwise people won't watch the entire conversation, which I think they should.
Well, it's so I such a good conversation, my buddy.
I want to ask you one final question, and you can correct you can correct me if I'm wrong. Does or doesn't it say in the Bible God is not the author of confusion?
That is absolutely true, though. The verse does say God is not the author of confusion, but of a sound mind. And he's talking directly to the church, and to a believer in what you believe.
Hold on.
And the thing
I don't need the entire context, because that's what he said. Then how come that we're so confused about who has it right here? Because obviously, you read something completely different than I do. The prophecy about Emmanuel already confirms that. And this,
who he's speaking to, my friend, is he's not speaking to you. He may not be speaking to you.
He may not be speaking to me. But if the Bible should be relevant to me, then I should be able to come to the exact same conclusion as you do, and we don't, and that's my problem.
Well,
I think that if your God is what the Bible says he is, he could have prevented this. He could have prevented this.
He says the exact opposite. God himself says, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts, and as far as the heavens are above the earth, so are my thoughts and my ways above your ways. And that he cannot be conceived by someone, especially that doesn't believe in him or know him. He cannot be recognized, and there will be confusion, because what God himself said, that when I wasn't a believer, the Bible said that I was suppressing the truth and unrighteousness, that I was denying the God who created me,
and if you
and
say
that I was pushing him away.
Okay.
And
I agree. Listen.
I
agree. I don't want to stretch this out too long. I agree. But if what you just said is correct, then it is God's fault that I'm an atheist. Because he chose, he chose, if God created me, he created me the way that I am. and he created you the way you are. So
Yeah.
he intentionally created us so different that one would believe the Bible and the other one wouldn't. So
See, I like it when you say that. My friend Peter, let me tell you something. Um, whether you know it or not, um, and I say this as a Christian, so I can't say this scientifically. Um, when I say these words to you, this is what brings offense to people. That the Lord Yeshua, God Almighty, whether you think that way or not, loves you. He died for you. He gave his life to give you a sound mind concerning him, so that you would know him, so that you would have relationship with him. He didn't do it as some crazy way of showing that, oh, he's so awesome and you're so nothing. He actually did it to show you that he wants to know you. That's his offer to you.
okay.
That death, which offends so many people that are not believers,
No, it doesn't. It
is
doesn't
the
offend me.
offer of love.
Listen, listen. It doesn't offend me at all. But if that is what he really wants, he also knows what would convince me. And if he wanted to
He
convince
does.
me,
And we
no,
talk
listen,
about that
no,
too.
listen. If he wanted to convince me, he would present me with what I need to be convinced. And
And see,
until he does, I can't help it. I can only be myself. So I have to
and
wait.
see
I
the
have to wait until he makes that move because it is out of my hands. I cannot I cannot choose to believe something that I'm not convinced of. Belief is not a choice. You have to be convinced. But
and see the thing
I'd
is
like to
that
wait, Jeff. I'd like to end it on this.
Jeff.
You get Jeff, Sean. Sorry,
It's okay,
I
man.
knew I
It's
was
okay.
gonna get that wrong at least once.
Ha
At
ha
least
ha!
once.
I got you, man. I got you.
Well, I saw the both of you in the same shot, so I know there's two. So that's out of the question. But I'll give you the same offer that I made Jeff. Uh, you can come
Sure.
back on, and we can have another show. And I would really like to have another show because I really enjoy talking to you guys. So far, we've still been able to have a decent conversation, and the same thing with Jeff. And even after last week's show, we stuck around for a time longer than the show ran to talk about all kinds of different things. So the people who are
That's
still in
right.
the side chat and want to come on the after show, because a lot of people wanted to jump in. Artemis, who you briefly met before we went on air, wants to come on. I saw
Sure.
Frustrated Atheist, who has been a co-host. He wants to come on. Um,
I was a frustrated atheist once,
well,
so I
this
I understand.
this
I
one might be
understand.
frustrated. This one might be
Tell.
frustrated, but he's cool.
I want to tell all your friends. I want to tell all your friends that are atheists and that don't believe, and all my friends that are watching that are atheists, is that this is what happens when a Christian and an atheist get together, and they both really care about each other, and they don't. Even if they disagree, they can still have a beautiful discussion.
And they don't have to hate each other. And that's the most
Exactly.
important part, I think. And
And see,
that
that to me is demonstrable when a Christian does that.
yeah,
To me, when a Christian does that, that's demonstrable.
sadly, that's not what all Christians do, and that is why we have that brief commercial at the start of the show, because that is about a Christian that was on my show, has blackmailed me, and has done pretty much everything to destroy me. I'm still here.
Yeah, see.
So is she, by the way.
Yeah, and
But
and you know what? Even if you don't believe this, brother, I'm praying for you, and I'm praying that your channel does well and does amazing. So I'm
well, thanks.
100% behind you.
Okay. Well, all we want to do is make people think, and if we achieve that, then
That's right.
we've reached our goal. So on that note, we're going to end this show. We're going to be here day after tomorrow on Sunday, where we're going to have Adam's first wife on. Sorry, Shawn. No. Not meant as an insult. We're going to have Lilith on. Lilith Liberated on Twitter.
It's not an insult. I used to say that.
I had a brief conversation with Lilith a while ago when she started her channel, and I would really like if everyone comes and joins for that conversation as well. That's going to be our new show, Herding Cats, because that's what you do if you get a couple of atheists together. You're herding cats. So that's going to be this Sunday, 3 p.m. Central, and that's 10 p.m. European time. So I hope I'll see you all then. Shawn, it was great having you on, and I really enjoyed it. So I hope that we can.
I love it too, man.
I hope we can do this again. So, see you all next time. We have a brief outro, and people who want to come on the after show, hit me up on Twitter, and I'll send you a link. Catch you all later, and see you all next time. Bye-bye.